and you were looking for a master's degree. How did you find JSIA? How did you realize that the Jindal School of International Affairs was going to be your home for a few years?
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for the introduction. So when I was looking at places to apply for my masters, the thing is, funnily enough, in my initial research for colleges to apply at, JSI did not come up. When I went through, I was looking at options, and I looked for a few options abroad, and then in India, the ones that we know of, there's JNU. I looked at Jadavpur University, Christ, and all. So how JSI actually happened was, so a friend of my sister's was actually doing the BAGA course at that time. I
Right.
think he graduated in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So she just suggested to me that he's doing this course, and why don't you have a word with him? He's in this university. And so I got talking to him, got feedback from him about JSIA, about the course, and then went ahead, did my own research on the website, went through the the course material and stuff, and that's how I decided, okay, this looks good, this looks promising, and from the feedback I got from him, and so I decided to go ahead and apply to Jindal also.
Wonderful. Wow. So it was nowhere on your radar. A family friend or somebody within your extended influence sphere of influence, they said, hey, listen, I'm doing the BA in global affairs. Why don't you take a look? Great.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
that's
All right. Same question to you, Bhargav. How did you manage to figure out what the Jindal School of International Affairs were? And like Nirmolika, I'd like you to focus on a little bit about what other options did you have at the time and why did you end up picking JSIA?
Thank you, Professor. It's certainly a pleasure being in touch with my alma mater. Now, my journey was quite adventurous, if I may use that word. I graduated BA, Bachelor of Arts in History, Economics, and Political Science from St. Philomena's College under University of Mysore. It's a fairly unheard of place as an academic institution, though I must say certain departments I do hold dear for whatever basic foundation I received. Now, my options were quite limited because back in 2014, not many universities used to offer IR degree. And to be very frank, personally, I was quite naive, again, if I may use that word, for lack of exposure into IR as a field, neither as an academic field nor as a professional field. So my obvious choices were JNU, Manipal, JGU, and obviously I had applied for at least half a dozen places abroad, and where again an obvious obstacle was funding. Though I got through 4 out of 6 universities I applied to.
Okay.
Now, of course, my eyes were all at Manchester and Aberdeen. Now, how I came across JGU was a pure accident, but I turned that accident into a personal adventure by calling the school up directly. And who picks up? Surprise, surprise, it was Dr. Cholia. So,
okay.
So after I spoke to him for nearly 45 minutes, he was gracious enough to come down all the way to Mysore, to my college, and deliver a lecture. So that kind of sealed my fate as far as my master's was concerned, primarily because I could see the faculty was quite unconventional, coming from a very traditional university. And they were quite spontaneous, and they were open to talk to students and guide them through. So that was one of the reasons. Obviously, I won't pretend and say I did not apply to JNU. I did. That got into hot waters as well because it overlapped with my final exams at Mysore University, and I got a curt response saying that is your personal problem.
Wow. Okay.
So, that is a very frank response to your question. Yeah, I hope I answered that.
Of course, of course. Well, thank you so much for that candid response, Bhargav. I'm going to stay with you for a moment now. So you spoke to the dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs directly, something that would be unheard of in most other universities or colleges, but you got that opportunity, and that sort of, and one thing led to another. Great, wonderful. So you joined the Jindal School of International Affairs, and you mentioned that you came from a relatively unheard of or unknown sort of higher education institution in Mysore. So what was the academic experience like at the Jindal School of International Affairs? So for example, could you tell us a little bit more about the classroom experience, how you felt about the faculty, what courses did you study, what optional subjects did you take up?
Certainly. So our core courses were international relations, economics, international law, and social science research methodology. This was in the first semester. Now, quite a few courses in the core courses were very impressive, and how it differed from my bachelor's was that the intensity was much higher. There was greater onus on our initiative to study and to be up to the mark. Nobody will actually spoon feed us, right? In bachelor's, that's usually the case, especially in conventional colleges. So we had to take up the mantle ourselves, right? So now, coming from having never lived outside of let's say Bangalore, Mysore radius, it was a big change, both academically and personally. And somehow I could navigate and become the CR back in that batch as well. Now, academically speaking, in the second semester, I took up I took I did Israel studies, then I did European studies. I also did Arabic in the first and second semester. Uh, then I did migration, which was taught by a Fulbright scholar visiting our university as an exchange faculty. I ended up going to his home institution back in Buffalo, New York, to do an internship. Then I took a couple more as audit. In fact, I did nearly 9 papers in my second semester,
So,
3 as audit.
Bhargav, for the benefit of our audience, could you explain what an audit of a course is?
Certainly. So when you take up a course, it is incumbent upon you to earn credits by passing that paper. When you understand that there is greater onus upon you and there's a lot of pressure, but you're still interested in other papers, you can still sit in the classes and you can practically audit them. You need not take exams for those papers. Basically, right. You get the knowledge, but you do not have that pressure of passing the paper.
So this reminds me of a line from this movie, Three Idiots. There is knowledge all around, just soak it up.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I must credit Professor Samrat Sinha and Asma Khan Lone. I audited, in fact, even Professor Urvashi Aneja as well. I audited all 3 courses. In fact, Professor Aneja once mentioned, you have appeared in all my classes, almost 99% attendance. Why don't you just write up a paper and finish it off? So I attended all 3 papers with complete attendance. So, and to be frank, that is serving me well even now, because we do counterinsurgency mechanisms for corporates right now where I work. And one of the key treatises we studied in that paper was very good.
So Bhargav, I'm just going to interrupt you right there. I will come to the question of what have you learned at JSIA that is helping you, in your work right now. But we'll keep that for slightly later. I just want to turn to Nirmolika to ask her the same question. Now Nirmolika, you joined us in 2018, about 4 years after Bhargav joined. There would have been an expansion of the faculty members, expansion of number of students, and expansion in the number of elective courses that you would have. Did you have a similar experience when you came to the Jindal School of International Affairs?
Right. So when I think a big challenge for me when I came to JSI was, getting used to being back in a classroom environment, because I was actually coming after a bit of a break after my bachelor's.
Right.
I graduated from my bachelor's in 2016 actually, and in between I was working for about 2 years.
Right.
So, getting back into, a classroom environment, getting used to the idea of, okay, sit in a class, write exams, do assignments, you have to sort of train yourself back to, get back into that routine of being a student, because
Right.
for 2 years I was used to, having a job, being a working person. So that was definitely a challenge that, took me a little time to sort of get back into it. But apart from that, I definitely, I mean, classroom experience, I found a change from my bachelor's. uh, in the sense that, as he also mentioned, Bhargav also mentioned, just the faculty is really good in what they do. There's a general, the environment of focusing on participation and students taking initiative on, having, it's something that's marked also as class participation. But even leaving the, the grading part of it aside, professors encourage you, the faculty encourages you to take part in discussions, ask questions. So there'll be, we sometimes it's happened in classes, there's a topic going on, but we digress because somebody's, brought up a point, and then, everybody gets interested and you sort of have another debate on that. But it helps everyone learn. So this is something that I did not like find in my bachelor's course. I mean, it was there to a certain degree, but it would be like maybe one person asked a question, and just generally, it's also the nature of the course was different. But this was something that really made the classes fun to sit through. Which I mean, I found myself enjoying this more than I did when I was doing bachelor's. Yeah, in terms of courses, so we had it's similar, the four core courses that Bhargav mentioned. We had the same four core courses in the first semester. International relations theory, there was international law, there was research methodology, and there was economics. So economics was a difficult point for me because I have no background in economics at all. I had no exposure to it before this. Through school I was a science student. I've done my bachelor's in mass communication, so didn't really study that there. So it was a little tough for me, and I tried as much as I could, to focus on the readings that the professors had sent. You know, go visit if the professor, if there's something that I don't understand. And I was really glad that right from the first semester they've also introduced the research methodology course, because it's very important. And this was something that was not really touched upon, previously, at least for me when I did bachelor. So it was something new for me dropping into this. And for a course like this, that's research, it's academic in nature. Knowing academic research methodology, how to write research papers, is very important, because that's the kind of coursework we also do when we go along.
Right. So it's very, I think there are two key takeaways from what you both have shared with me. One is the emphasis on research, and the other is, as Nirmolika points out, the emphasis on class participation. Now, from the faculty perspective, I can sort of talk about how class participation affects us as faculty members, affects the class, and how it sort of allows us as students not just to learn from the teacher, but also to learn from each other. So for example, you might have an idea in your mind or a question in your mind, and you don't want to raise it because you think it's stupid, it's irrelevant. But then somebody else raises a hand and says, hey, professor, how about this? And it's the exact same idea. That gives you a sense of validation. That gives you a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, and a sense of thinking, maybe I'm not alone in thinking whatever it is I'm thinking, right? So that's one. Second is that of research. Now, this is a problem that we faced in high schools and a lot of colleges across India, where, if I ask somebody to write a research paper, they'll probably just copy paste from an existing article. And now that is a problem that we have across not just academia, or across it could be across industries, right? I mean, it's no different from Anu Malik lifting a tune from some Hollywood number or some pop number and to put it into his own songs. Now that is something, that rigor of research, of being able to uncover facts for themselves and being able to sort of form one's opinion on their own, that is a skill, a critical thinking skill that I think we cherish in our alumni, and I'm quite certain our alumni, really really benefit from that as well. All right, I'm going to stay with Nirmolika for a bit. So Nirmolika, I mentioned in my introduction to you that you are an intelligence analyst at Wipro, right? Now, here's my question. Wipro is an IT company. Why would they need an intelligence analyst? And what is it that you do for a living?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and that's a question that came to my mind too when I came across, the job application. That okay, it's a corporate. Like, how does this fit in? But the thing is, so I'm an analyst. I'm part of Wipro's global security team. So they have a group called the Global Security Group, and essentially the work, the job profile of that group is to ensure the safety of Wipro's employees and their businesses globally. So the IT in that part is aside, but the GSG, as we call it, is made up of similar analysts who have a background like mine. So we usually, our task is, we have a number of inputs coming in from about basically global events happening everywhere, and we then, our job is to sort of sift through all of that information coming in and determine some what could be possibly impact our employees, our offices,
Right.
what could be of importance. So
Right.
that's where my IR degree, my knowledge and the skills I acquired here come into play, because I could be monitoring events like any political developments happening somewhere, any protest activity, there could be conflict situations, even natural disasters come into play here.
Right.
So the reading that I have done while being at JSIA, the analytical skills, the research skills that I've learned here, then helps, because then there's so much information coming. I can analyze trends. I can see that okay, this situation may become like may become something of concern. So we can flag it down. So
Right.
that is the
So,
sort of.
so Nirmolika, if I may just interject here for a minute, would you say that the skills that you picked up at JSIA directly influence how well you do your job?
I would say they do. They do. Not everything. I mean, frankly, the kind of coursework and writing work that we do here, that kind of research and writing that you do would definitely help if somebody is going forward in a research based or an academic career. So
Hmm.
that is one place that I did find a difference, because the kind of writing we're doing when we're in my job specifically as an analyst at a corporate, the writing has to be more, it has to be shorter, it has to be
Yeah.
simple. That's not the kind of writing we do academically.
Right.
So that is something that's different. But other skills like analysis, research, that is definitely helping me in doing my job here.
All right. Wonderful. I'm going to turn over to Bhargav now. Again, the same question to you, Bhargav. You're a regional operations director at APAC Assistance. I will admit that just before, about 5 minutes before this session, I quickly looked up what is APAC Assistance. I could not make head or tail of it. But do tell us, Bhargav, what is it that you do for a living, and whether and how, if at all, skills that you picked up at let's say the JNU School of International Affairs, whether those help you do your job.
Okay. So APAC Assistance is a security and risk management firm. So similar to what Nirmolika explained, we come in as an external entity and help businesses basically manage risk, not just security.
Okay.
Now, you can think of it like this. You have an internal auditor. Any company will have an internal auditor, and you'll also have a company like EY, which does audits as an external entity.
External auditor, yeah.
Very similarly, security and risk management also requires external help, especially where the multinationals will not be able to fledge themselves across the world and understand the regional context or functional specialization. For example, some of our clients are major engineering majors or oil sector clients from Thailand or even from the US for that matter, who operate in South China Sea. Now, to understand the dynamics of South China Sea and Southeast Asia, they require specialists, and that's exactly where come into picture.
Right.
We have footprint across the Asia Pacific region, right? So that's precisely what I do. I basically manage the operations and the administration of the firm internally, and I also deal with client management and basically taking care of where do they need us to pitch in, right? So that's basically what we do.
Right.
As part of that, we also do intelligence. We do specialist risk management. We provide consulting services for very specific requirements. And we also do constant monitoring and periodic and daily reports to support them in any way possible. So, I mean, one big example I can give you are the farmers' protests. I mean, people were blinking, especially in the multinational firms. What is happening, right? So that's exactly where we're coming.
Right.
So we had to support them both periodically, as well as constant alerting and constant monitoring.
Right.
So that's basically what I do. Now coming to the next segment, did I take away something from JSA which is actually helping me in my in my role as regional manager? I would say it is. My answer is very similar to Nirmolika's, but I would actually focus on the gaps which need to be filled in rather than which actually helped me, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because yes, there were courses which were very helpful, especially courses like insurgency and terrorism, which still helps me understand how para groups behave while consulting for my clients, for example. At the same time, a majority of the courses are geared more towards academic research, or they're largely academic in nature. Now, I must admit, there were quite a few electives which were geared more towards business and corporates, so they may actually augment our skills towards that direction.
Right.
I did not take that, and I need to state this, I left a year early to QMU. So I can't really comment on a few of those courses, and nor can I comment on the current courses. But what I had back then was largely academic in nature. They were sort of designed for students to pick up skills for academics rather than corporates. So, which there was certainly a gap. There needs to be a bridge between the academic nature of courses and the requirements within the corporate sector.
So, Bhargav, would you say that this is more a function of which courses you take up? Because, as I'm given to understand, there are a huge number of courses now available, optional courses available. So, are there enough courses if I were a JSIA student and if I had to take up, let's say, 5, 10 optional courses over the course of my degree program? Would I be able to take up enough courses that gear me towards a corporate job, staying away from academic oriented courses? Is that possible?
Okay, so it is possible, but however, let me put it this way. Now, I had about 12 to 13 options. Out of them, I took 9, 3 of them as audit.
Mm-hmm.
Out of them, probably about 3 of them were more corporate oriented, while the rest were academic. So
Right.
there is that disparity.
Mm.
So So students need to understand which direction are they going towards, right? And at the same time, I do understand, it's a little hard to, comprehend which course will give us what kind of skills and how are they going to be applied in the corporate field,
Right.
or in terms of professional services, for example.
Okay, so Bhargav, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your dual degree experience. You mentioned that you left a year early and that you spent was it 1 year or 2 years at Queen Mary University?
It was about 14 months. So
14 months, right?
yes.
So could you tell us what this is? There a selection process? Is it competitive? And what was the deal between JSIA and QMO?
Okay, sure. So there was a present. I still remember in the second semester there was a presentation which I did not attend by QMUL representatives, right? So the offer was this: we applied to QMUL through JSIA, and those who are selected would be provided full scholarships for the second year. So I did not have to pay a fee either at JSIA nor at QMUL, right? So that was the first advantage. Second is that the credits from QMUL would get transferred to JSIA automatically. as I complete the master's there. Now, why this works? Because in the UK, masters is only 1 year, while in India they are 2 years. So I simultaneously complete the requirements for a 2 years master's in India while completing the master's in the UK. And QMUL degree is a standalone degree.
Right.
So while JSI recognizes the time spent in QMUL and gives us the degree, I mean, the India degree for 2 years. I mean, needless to say, some of the civil service or government job requires masters, and they recognize only 2 years. So it's a double whammy. So we get to have both.
Well,
and
I'm hoping that with the new education policy, that is set to change in the future. But do
Hopefully.
go on, Bhargav.
Okay, my experience in London, to be frank, I was in for a surprise because I had never lived in a city. Okay, I come from a small town outside Bangalore. I've never lived in the city, and suddenly I'm put in central London. In fact, to be very specific, in East London, campus of Queen Mary University of London. Right now, this is a composite college within the University of London network, and the experience was very good overall. But academically, there were some elements which I felt could have been borrowed from JGU as well, because JGU is new, they are innovative, they have borrowed key things from both US and in the UK, whereas QMU is quite traditional.
Right.
So overall, it was very, very interesting to see how professional people are. They are very focused, and there is a lot of onus on the students as individuals to pick up the slack, do the readings or do the research, and get things done. There is very minimal inducement from the academic structure.
Right. Now, I think that's a good point to make, Bhargav, because this is something that, of course, I've seen over the years in terms of higher education versus school education, where the spoon feeding, as you put it, is a lot more at the school level, far less at the university level. Now, of course, the whole point is that by the time you get into a university, whether it's for a bachelor's or a master's degree, people are adults. Let's just face it, right? And as adults, we are responsible for what we do. And therefore, the onus really is on building that sort of maturity and that idea that I am responsible for my actions, right? All right, I'm going to switch back to Nirmolika for a bit. And I want to ask her, right now, we've got about 50 odd people, who are actually listening in, right? Most of them are, the large majority of them are would-be students of the Jindal School of International Affairs, right? What advice would you have for them? They're on the cusp of joining a private university, an international affairs program, or a political science program. What advice would you have for them? And then I'm going to ask the same question to Bhargav. Nirmolika, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Wow, okay. Difficult question. See, advice for JSI, I mean, for joining Jindal, I would say is you should. This is something that I found a drawback in myself when I joined. The word I think that Bhargav also used earlier, I was naive and probably, landed up here and attended classes with not maybe having done enough preparation on my end. Of course, joining, you don't know, you're there to learn, but just, being a little more informed about what's happening in the world when I'm going into a course like international relations. And, the classroom atmosphere can be competitive, and with the focus on, the emphasis on the class participation, I found myself initially in the first few classes overwhelmed because there were students who, were having these discussions, were raising points with the professor about, if this could be general information about what's happening in the world. There's a class we're discussing international relations. There's something about something about politics, and I found myself being a little clueless and overwhelmed, and realize that there is some onus on myself also to have some background research, to have a little bit knowledge before I reach class, instead of just landing up there and expecting, which happens again with this whole culture of spoon feeding, that oh yeah, the professor will tell, I really need to do this on my own. So this is something that anybody coming in for, and not just this course, for any course for that matter,
Yeah.
yeah, joining a college, that don't just leave it up to the professors are going to do everything, because then it can overwhelm you. And if you're somebody who is gets stuck under pressure, it can since the beginning become the sort of thing that weighs in on you, that I was clueless in class, or I couldn't answer a question, I couldn't think of anything to discuss in class. So that's there. And apart from that, I would say Jindal has great faculty, so really make use of the any chance you get to interact with them, or outside of classroom also. This is something that I feel I did not do enough. This is one regret I have, that probably apart from the classroom interactions, for if there's something that you might have certain ideas about something, there's something else you want to discuss, the faculty is always open. It's very easy, you just send them a mail, and send you back an appointment when they're free, and you can easily go and talk to them in the office. They're very approachable that way. Even on assignments, on stuff like that, getting feedback is very easy from them. You can just meet them, and it helps you get better. So definitely somebody joining should utilize this. You should utilize the other infrastructure that Jindal provides. We have an excellent library. There's so many activities happening almost every day. We would get so many mails that there's a seminar happening on this topic here. There'll be a seminar happening in some other school, and you can easily go and sit there. There's this, Jindal doesn't have this atmosphere of you stick to your own school, you're from JSIA, the interdisciplinary approach that you have. So definitely somebody should make use of all of this, because there's a lot to learn outside the classroom.
So just to sum it up, and please correct me, Nirmalika, if I missed out on anything. Make sure that you're prepared to speak out and speak up in class, right? One.
Yeah.
Second, make sure that you take full advantage of the faculty members that you have. I don't know if you know this, Bhargav, but we've recently been joined by two former ambassadors. One is Professor Amura, who was the Indian ambassador, the Syrian ambassador to India. And of course, we've got Dr. Mohan Kumar, who used to be the Indian ambassador to France. Now, for those kind of former diplomats, and of course, the galaxy of faculty members that you have, for them to be as available as Nirmalika suggests, that is an advantage that I will expect all students to take up at all points of time. And of course, the concept of interdisciplinarity, and I'm glad we got to touch upon this, the fact that you can sit in on courses, you can take up courses offered by other schools. So, for example, I know for a fact that the law school offers a course on the United Nations and lawmaking. Now, is that going to be relevant for an international relations or a diplomacy student? Absolutely. Right? It goes without saying that if I had aspirations of working in the UN system, I'd like to know how it works, how they make laws, right? All right, I'm going to pose the same question to Bhargav now. What advice would you have for students who are about to join JSIA, whether it's a BA or an MA degree?
Yeah. Yes. So my initial advice is very similar to Nirmalika. That is, preparation is key and it is irreplaceable. You need to know what you're getting into. At the same time, I do understand at the level of bachelor's, it is very hard. It is very hard. It's almost impossible to know where you will be 4 years down the line. But for masters, it's a different story. Okay, I'll address masters first, okay, because I've been through the experience. First and foremost, I would strongly recommend from my own personal experience, try and get as much of experience outside as possible. It may be a year's break, 2 years break, more well-known the name, it's better. Because it all adds up, primarily because of the level of maturity, social skills. At the same time, when you step out of the master's, you're not somebody who is stepping out of nearly 6 years, 5 to 6 years of university without any experience to offer to an employer. Okay, that I felt it, especially in London, where I'm stepping out after nearly 5.5 years of university, straight through. And I had no experience whatsoever after my BA in my SWAT. And I had very little internships, what I did during my master's. So what did I write in my CV, for example? So in masters, it is very, very important that you have some transferable skills that you can actually offer, because you will be competing against some of the brightest minds coming out of this millennial internet age. And if for example, it may be any company, okay? It may be risk management, or it may be a foreign affairs office. If I'm presenting my CV and I'm saying that I do not know Excel, then basically I'm cutting myself short, right? And that's exactly what students need to understand and plan ahead before of masters. Masters is where you cement your skills, and bachelor's is where you grow your skills. That's how I would delineate. Okay, masters is supposed to give you a booster shot. Right. So that is about the masters. Now, coming to bachelor's, during bachelor's, I learned most of my foundational economic skills, or in economics, what I use till now, in bachelor's. That's exactly where you get unlimited amount of freedom, because in high school it is highly regimented. In bachelor's, it's the first level where you get freedom. Make use of that freedom very, very wisely. For example, in my own experience, people used to hate me because I used to be in my department all the time. And there was a ploy in that. That is, I prepared the entire 3 years presentation for my professors. In that process, I actually learned whatever little I know now. Right? So I'm just giving you one example how you can utilize the resources what you have been given. It may be in terms of the library or in terms of very, very resourceful professors. Okay, never underestimate them. They may sound quite academic while talking in the class, but the more closer you work with them, it may be on a project or it may be on as something as mundane as lectures. Right? So they need to make use of the resources what they have been given. After that, they also need to have a sense of reality. Okay, they are not entering mainstream subject. Security, foreign policy, international affairs, these are niche fields. I'm sorry, I cannot get a better word than that. Niche.
That's actually true.
We do not have a marketplace ready for us waiting with packages. Okay, even a third-rate engineering college today will have at least three different companies lining up to offer jobs. Why? Because they may be lower in jobs, but they have something, right? In our field, we need to be aware what we are going to do ourselves. Okay, so at least in my calendar year or academic year, our career orientation was next to nothing.
Okay.
I'm not criticizing anyone, but that was just the reality. Okay. For example, I was not aware there was a company called Control Risk or Pinkerton where I worked before APAC Assistance. Right. And that work experience at Pinkerton is the reason why wherever I am right now. And that's precisely why I want to underline and stress your experience is what matters the most, though your skills are set during your academic period.
Right. So Bhargav, if I may just interject here for a moment, would you say that a student who is getting into a JSIA program looking for a career in international relations, in international affairs, in global affairs, should it be upon that student, should the onus be on the student to actively start looking for future employment opportunities?
Absolutely. There is no better way to say that. The onus is almost entirely on the student. Of course, there will be help provided by great institutions like JSI because they take it upon themselves to aid students as much as possible through various means. Okay,
Right.
and I've been extremely impressed with the way the Career Center has reached out to me personally for recruitment. We did recruit from JSI, right?
Great.
So,
Okay.
in fact, Pinkerton, where I worked before this, had nearly 3 or 4 people from JSI itself.
Right.
So that may be helping hand, but beyond that, the onus is almost entirely on the students. They need to understand what they are going to do after 3 years.
Okay. All
It
right.
is difficult,
So,
but
Bhargav,
that's imperative.
I'm going to put a stop to this. Very, very sorry. We could discuss this all day long. And of course, there are so many other things that I want to talk to both of you about. But I've noticed that there has been a steady stream of questions from our audience coming in. Before we move to the audience questions, very quickly to both Nirmolika and to Bhargav, would you go back? Suppose if you had the ability of Doctor Strange, would you like to use the time stone, right? Go back in time and make changes. Nirmolika, you go first.
Uh, yeah, I think if given the chance, I would, to go back, and I would definitely would choose to come to JSI again. But yes,
Okay.
there are things I would have done differently. Like I mentioned before, where I lacked in utilizing the resources given to me. I
Right.
feel like, this is something if I get a chance again, I will definitely, work towards doing that more. Same in terms of class participation. So the thing is, I'm not a very confident public speaker,
Right.
and
Well,
this
I would beg to differ right now, Nirmolika. I think you're doing perfectly fine right now.
so that then comes in as a point in favor of my experience at
Right.
JSI, because the whole atmosphere helped. But yeah, I do have had troubles speaking up in class, and I did find myself not participating as much as I should have.
Right.
It's definitely on a personal front. It is a progress for me, because compared to at least how I was in bachelor's, there was a more level of engagement on my side. But given a chance to do it again, I would definitely like to improve upon that and not miss out the chance, the learning that happens when you're having
Right.
conversations in class. So these
Okay.
are two things. Yeah.
Great. Bhargav, same question. You have the time stone. Do you turn the bracelet and go back in time and do things differently?
I would like to problematize this question a little more.
I hate that
Primarily,
problematize. Go ahead. Go ahead, Bhargav.
primarily to underline my own preparation. Okay, so as I said, for a master's course, experience was absolutely, it's imperative. Without that, there is something missing during the entire process. I mean, during the process, it may not be apparent, but once you go through it, then you feel you're not matured enough. So
Mm.
probably that's something I would certainly do, because I had an option of a couple of companies which I got through during the campus interview. I chose not to because there's a saying of um, academic umbilical cord,
Mm.
if that's cut, it will be very hard to come back into masters. That was one of the reasons why I chose to. So I probably would have chosen to work at
Mm.
least for 1 or 2 years
Right.
before choosing JSIA. Now, I felt no problem with JSIA, especially given the Indian academic landscape.
Right.
However, my hope is that if I had taken that break, the institution would have matured much more uh, to basically add more arrows to my quiver,
Mm.
basically,
So that's
if
very
I may say so.
interesting. So that's a very interesting point you made, Bhargav, because I know that Nirmolika has spent a couple of years, out in the real world, so to speak, and then she chose to come to JSIA. And here we have you, Bhargav, who's come directly from a bachelor's to a master's, suggesting that perhaps a couple of years in the real world, maybe would be helpful for the maturity process. Now, I would actually agree with you. I did my master's in law immediately after my bachelor's, and I think I would have benefited from having a couple of years of experience. under my belt before moving on to a master's. Now, thank you both so much for this wonderful conversation we've had so far. We've had a ton of questions from our audience, and I wanna quickly go over some of the basic questions. We've got a question: is the IR course same as the MA in Diplomacy, Law, and Business? Absolutely. We use the term international relations as a catch-all phrase. At Jindal, it's known as the MA in Diplomacy, Law, and Business, or if you're looking at the undergraduate program, it's the BA or the Bachelor of Arts in Global Affairs. All right. I've got a very interesting question from Lisa Gupta. What if after joining JSIA, we made it to JNU? What should be our choice? Now, hey, you know what? Both Nirmolika, Bhargav, I want you to be honest about this, completely honest. And I'm assuming both of you have visited JNU campus. You know what it's like. I've gone to JNU campus many times. I've been on the PSR or the Parthasarathi Rocks. I've had the midnight biryani. But what would you say? Nirmolika, go ahead.
So the thing is, actually, I haven't been to the JNU campus. So
right.
yeah, I don't know. It really, I think, comes up to a person's individual choice also, because like at least when I was applying to places, it might have changed, but at that point I think JNU had a degree. The degree is in political science, and they have a specialization in international relations. So
Right.
I mean, of course, I don't have the experience, so I can't say how much of if you want to do something specifically in IR, I don't know how much of that would be part of the course, because it's part of a larger course. So I mean, I can't say at that point if but I feel it may not be as extensive as probably JSI would be. But then I have not checked out what the course is in detail for me to really
Right.
make
So that's
that.
really interesting, Nirmolika, because so what you're suggesting is the program at JNU is a lot more diverse. It's a lot more open with a specialization, whereas the program at Jindal is just that specialization. Same number of credits, same number of hours. Bhargav, any pointers?
Yes, I have actually been to JNU campus only probably once or twice. That was as part of a seminar from JGU, of course.
Okay.
So I see academically, I felt, as Nirmolika rightly said, they are far more diverse. At the same time, from some of the seniors who have actually done MPhil at JNU after doing MADLB, I found out that they have access to some of the biggest names in the academic landscape in India.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to recognize where there is credit, right? So JNU being a new institution relatively, and the legacy institution that is JNU, that would be a good combination. That's one. However, we need to also understand, coming from JGU, we have a largely sheltered academic life, as opposed to JNU, which is a lot more politically active. So it may or may not be for everybody. And that has also been the experience, what I've heard. Because at JGU, there's a very, very rigorous focus on academics. There is no distraction.
Yeah.
But at JNU, though that academic spirit is very much alive, the distractions may not be for everybody, or it may not be everybody's stuff.
Right. No, those are external factors beyond academics that obviously will help shape a lot of people's decisions. Now, the point I think is that yes, I agree, JNU has some of the biggest marquee names in pol science, in sociology, in the social sciences in general. My question is that would they be as approachable as faculty members at JGU? Bhargav, you want to take this one?
Yes, I frankly cannot speak for the entire faculty there, but I have known some of the faculty from JNU who have actually lectured as guest lecturers at JGU. They've been great. In fact, I still remember the lectures what they gave us in JGU as guest lectures, of course. So as far as my experience goes, yes, they are approachable. They are quite humble. But at the same time, I've also heard very different experiences, so which I can't really speak for.
That's fine. That's great. I've got wow. There are loads of questions here. Let's see if there is something that's worth your while. Of course, we will cover some of the other questions that I can answer very, very quickly. Okay, very quickly, guys. Starting package that we're looking at after the MA course. This is one of the major questions that is on everybody's mind. What can I expect as a starting package? Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Bhargav?
Yes, I can speak with some authority, I hope, because I do recruitment for my firm. Okay, I have recruited from JGU as well. Now, we need to understand that it depends entirely on the firm, but if I can speak for my firm, it is largely based on the skill sets, the specialization in terms of regional studies, and experience. Right. Somebody with experience at a place like Max or MidCat will definitely be billed much higher, right, as compared to somebody without credible corporate experience. Right. At the same time, somebody with Middle East or East Asian specialization is certainly more sought after as opposed to generic theoretical expertise or specialization in thematic studies, such as, let's say, somebody studies terrorism in general, may not be as highly billed as opposed to somebody who specializes in regional studies in East Asia.
Right. So it depends upon, so effectively, right, it boils down to what your specialization is in college, right?
That's right. Okay. And we need to again recognize each company will have their own criteria. Right. If you can reflect on the industry standard right now, somebody with a master's analyst without experience is unlikely to be billed probably about 400,000 an annum. Right. That's about the average, what you can expect, minimum.
Right. Same question to Nirmolika. Do you want to take a crack at this?
I mean, of course, I don't have the authority on this. I've just been working for 6 months now, but I think I would agree with what Bhargav mentioned, that it depends on the kind of company and the kind of field you get into. Because if you're getting the corporate risk analysis, the kind of package will be different. If you are somebody who is more interested in getting into research or something like a think tank, so that's going to be a different package there. So yeah, and skills and the average, what he mentioned, is something I think I would agree with, at least in the corporate. Somebody who is a complete fresher and with a master's degree also. So
right. Okay. Let's take another one. What are the career opportunities after graduating in international relations? Open to either of you.
Okay, so I'll go step by step. Okay, so I'll talk about my own field, that is corporate. That is an obvious one, with multinationals expanding across the board. They may have hit a speed bump with pandemic, but believe it or not, our workload has tripled after pandemic. Right. So in corporate is an obvious choice. That is corporate intelligence, security, and risk management. And more skill sets they offer, better it is. And then comes the think tanks. That is a policy-oriented research. It's almost entirely research-oriented. Some of the examples I can give is CLOS or CAPS, Center for Air Power Studies, or Land Warfare Studies. And here, there's very minimal exposure to corporate field or business-oriented approach. It's a complete contrast. We have had people from both the fields. The way we approach work is completely different. We are very, very client-focused, client-centric. If something is not relevant to a client, we do not even touch it. So that's how business-oriented we are, as opposed to a think tank, which looks at looks at things in a more comprehensive manner. And their focus is largely defined by the institutional goals or institutional direction, what the founders may have set in.
Right.
There are different kinds of think tanks. There are policy-oriented think tanks. There are thematically focused think tanks, such as, let's say, gender-based think
Right.
tanks, or there are human rights-based think tanks, or there are general ones which are largely focused towards policy, like Delhi Policy Group, right? So that's the think tank aspects. Then comes the NGO sector, the development and humanitarian sector. In this sector, it all depends on what courses or what specialization you offer them. Personally, I know some of the biggest NGOs in India. They're very open to the skill sets what we may bring in. International affairs is a niche, and that's not something what they look for actively. They look for something more tangible, something transferable, right? So developmental studies is a very fantastic subject if people can specialize in it. NGO sector is very much open for taking. Even within that, we need to understand international affairs is something which people do not understand within the humanitarian sector. They understand specializations such as natural resource management.
Okay.
If an NGO is working in the rural areas, they want to know how best they can project manage their programs. Project management is another. So such skills people need to build within their masters or bachelors, along with the larger specialization what they aim to. Otherwise, the NGO sector is very, very difficult.
Right.
Okay. Then comes the academics. If they're really focused towards academics, PhD, and teaching, then JNU is a perfect fit, because from what I've felt, there are professors from some of the biggest names in the world who can properly give us good guidance, or let's say great guidance, in how best to establish their credential academically to actually move further within the academic sphere.
And I'm guessing that having these kind of faculty members just opens doors for you at other universities the world over, I'm guessing.
Most certainly, yes, because in fact, I still remember some of the reference letters provided by my own professors at JNU. They were, I got some amount of credibility when I applied, because they recognized the names, because they're very well published. So yes, it does have an advantage.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bhargav. I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to answer myself. Let's say I've got a question on a BA Global Affairs versus a BA Liberal Arts with International Relations as a major. Now, to Jairaj, who's asked this question, and I think it's a very pertinent question to ask, please do understand that a liberal arts program is a far more broad-based program which focuses on pedagogy. It focuses on learning how to learn, right? With the effect and with the expectation that you should be able to go out into the world and learn whatever it is you want to learn. That's the pith and substance of a liberal arts program. Yes, you may have a major or a specialization in international relations, of course, and that's entirely a personal choice. However, a bachelor's degree or any specialized degree, and this applies not just to international relations, it'll apply to economics, to political science, to psychology, to any major that you can think of. A specialized degree is probably going to have far more content, is probably going to have far more focus on that particular subject area, on that particular discipline, right? So it depends upon you whether you prefer to specialize more, let's say later on at the master's level, or would you like to specialize right at the bachelor's level? It's entirely up to you. All right, one last question perhaps I can squeeze in before it's already 6 o'clock. Just one moment. Thank you, Chetna, for putting up that post. Great. We've already covered this question that's been asked. by Yashiba. What do you think are the key points master students should keep in mind starting in JSIA to make ourselves more likely to be cut out for future employment prospects? What was your experience like? We've actually covered most of these questions. Indu ma'am, if you could just put in the fee details, the tuition fee and the hospital fees over here. Okay, quick question to both of you. Last one, okay? So Jindal offers, obviously, in terms of its PG programs, it offers the LLB, the MBA, a master's in public policy, and a master's in diplomacy, law, and business. Now, what's the difference between, in terms of job opportunities, do you guys feel, Bhargav and Nirmolika, do you guys feel that there is a difference between public policy and diplomacy? So for a student who's wanting to get into a social science oriented master's program, I'm faced with two choices. I can either go for public policy or I can go for international affairs diplomacy. Which would have the better job opportunity? Never mind interest. Never mind interest. Nirmolika, any thoughts?
Honestly, it's hard to say which will have a better job opportunity. I think public. I think both of them are, I would say, niche fields, as Bhargav mentioned. So at least I personally think I find it difficult to sort of compare that, which one would be better, because for me, I think it ultimately boils down to what would you really like to do, because I mean, you could get into public policy. I mean, the thing is, if you're studying IR, it does encompass a segment of, there is a policy making involved in that too. So it's I think it's very cut and dry to just say that this is better, that is better. It's for me personally, I don't think I can really compare which would have
so
better.
you're suggesting that just pick what you prefer. If you're good enough at it, the money will roll in, right? Okay, Bhargav.
Yes, I think that sentence is very, very relevant here. Pick what is interesting to a certain individual. Now, that is key. That is key because if somebody is very passionate about international relations theory, for example, they would feel it suffocating within public policy just because of career opportunities. But if somebody is more leaning towards practical aspects of both subjects, I will have to side more with public policy. There is a reason for that, which is in security field, there are limits to what a civilian can or cannot do, especially having experienced this. If we are deploying somebody on field to help out a client, it is highly unlikely we will pick a civilian. It is almost always a former military veteran. Okay, almost always. So there is that limitation. But in public policy, if they are purely looking at practicality and not their interest in security or international relations, then the field is far more open, because NGO field kind of becomes open because public policy itself is a specialization.
Right.
At the same time, I need to draw some attention to the recent scuffle between governments and big multinationals like Twitter, Google, Tesla. And if people remember, the public policy head of Twitter had to quit because of their scuffles with the current government. Now, that kind of brings focus mainly to that bridge between multinationals which operate like governments and the actual governments. Who will bridge that gap? And that's exactly where public policy come in if they're really, really interested in the practical aspects of either of these subjects.
Just a moment. Let me just unmuted. Indu ma'am, could you please put yourself? Thank you. All right. So thank you so much, guys. I think that brings us to the end of the session. Words are not enough to thank you both, Nirmolika and Bhargav. Thank you so much for a really wonderful session. It was basically a conversation between three friends, right? Indu ma'am, thank you so much for setting up. Tanushree, I didn't know you were there. But thank you for being here. Thank you for coming up. To our IT team, again, thank you. You guys have been the backbone of the university since March 2020. And I look forward to having more conversations with alumni from JSIA in the future as well. For those of you who missed, once again, for those of you who missed out on our first edition, it's there on our YouTube page, it's there on our Facebook page. Feel free to take a look at that as well. And the very next time we have a conversation like this, please feel free to join us once again. Once again, thank you very much, and stay at home, stay safe and stay healthy. All right.
Yeah, next will be on 5th June. 5th June is the next webinar.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bhargav, and thank you, Nirmolika, and thank you, RJ sir, for making it a rocking session and lively session.
All right.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much.